XRP and Ripple has brought in a disruptive technology. This disruptive technology is playing its role well. And if we properly understand its design and way it is designed to use, then you will be happy about how the regulations and banks are changing. Because at the same time, we have to understand the game plan of the company Ripple itself. When we do understand it properly, then the updates floating around us will actually make sense. If you remember, back in 2018, we heard from Ripple CEO that we are at the first mile of a marathon, but now it's kind of changing. They are looking at the last mile. So let's actually look at what kind of announcements are going to come during this event of 2020. Because this is a game of giants, we really have to go through all the documents and try to connect them so that we stay relevant and updated. Because the game was never paused. It was always moving based on how they planned initially. If we look at these correspondence from Ripple the company and different governments across the world, this from Canada and this from United States, we'll actually understand there are dots to be connected. While investing in an innovative technology and a disruptive one, we actually have to understand what we are investing in, right? So here in this article, it's actually showcasing innovation lessons that respond to fintech challenges. So this is in our field of financial technologies. Legacy organizations will be displaced if they don't self-disrupt. So they are actually trying to keep up, but the pace of Ripple and XRP is too much. They can't actually keep up. So what all sustaining technologies have in common is that they improve the performance of established products. We are way more than what Swift can actually compete with, along with the dimensions of performance that mainstream customers in major markets have historically valued. Now, in the mainstream markets, which we have to see is US, Europe, all across the globe, market makers are actually appreciating the product and the technology itself. So if we actually go through the innovation, it is actually transforming the entire industry. And if we go and listen about the design itself for XRP, you'll understand what guys are talking about. Is it FUD? Is it the reality? We will actually be able to understand what we have to go through.
Are in competition with.
So if you think about a payment system, there are typically three components for a payment system. One is rules and standards that all financial institutions and participants agree to follow. The second is a risk management infrastructure to figure out how do you deal with reversals, or how do you deal with a problem when there is a payment goes wrong or something like that. And the third is a settlement system. What distributed ledgers are purely the settlement infrastructure. So it is vitally important for systems or companies like Ripple to work with financial institutions who can bring the rules, standards, and the risk management infrastructure to use the distributed systems for their financial transactions. So
it should be crystal clear and it should be understood in that way. Like settlement is the last part of that. And currently we are actually looking kind of that last mile of the global payments. So yes, it looks somewhere it's nearing to that. And when we are actually going through these documents, even though these are a bit old, that's why it actually makes sense, because they were working with the regulators from 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and in some cases 5 years. So they are working on that, and they were working on that. And now they are making progress with the regulations as well as the settlement area, right? So the distributed ledger technology is there for the settlement aspect, which is kind of the end of that, right? And HSBC here is actually mentioning that as a game changer. Now, if we actually look at this one, which just came out yesterday for me, that's May 31 today. Here in South Korea, it's 1st. So it actually shows there is a change. FINMA approves in-core bank to carry out cryptocurrency transactions. Because some do consider digital asset as cryptocurrency, or we can call it's just another name for that, right? So our customers benefit in one fell swoop from the expansion to a new asset class without having to invest in infrastructure and new processes themselves. meaning for them it is so easy, and this while maintaining the usual security standards and how we build the bridge to traditional asset class. This you need to keep in your mind, because they are actually talking about cryptocurrency transactions and how they're going to connect it with the traditional assets, because this is a new asset class itself, a bridge technology here. Even though there are a lot of digital assets, this one is particularly designed to bridge any type of value. Let it be Bitcoin, let it be Ether, let it be fiat, let it be anything of value. If it is in a tokenized form, it is in a digital form, this can actually bridge that. And now banks and regulators are coming out and saying, yeah, you can actually do that. And at the same time, Inco will now be able to allow institutional clients to purchase and sell and hold crypto assets, which is expected to further play into increasing the appetite of the emerging asset class. Now, along with the utility, they are also looking at trading and investing in this new asset class. So if some of them are trading, majority of them will also be investing. They will be looking at the potential of this asset class for the future, right? If we are looking at next 5 years, they will be looking at next 20 years, that's for sure, because they are the giant players, the smart money, right? So in that aspect, they'll try to outpace us and kick us out. But if we know the proper potential of the asset in which we are investing, then they will never be able to do that, because we already know how much time it will take and what is the return on investment we are looking at. Now, while moving ahead to understand how these are being played out, say from 2015, then towards 2018, and what we have recently here, we actually need to understand the entire game plan, right? So first, they actually told they have 3 stages in which settlement or the distributed ledger technology comes at the end. And at the same time, in that last part of settlement, there are other things to check out too, because it's coming in a flow. So let's listen to this.
A bank in each of the key regions of the world, because if you can connect one bank on ACH in the US to one bank on SEPA in Europe, you have effectively connected all of the banks on those 2 networks. So you really get a multiplier effect. Now we have this Fedor out of Germany on SEPA, and we have now these 2 US banks on ACH. We got to work on China, we got to work in South America, India, and really continue to spread it and get to some of the bank networks. So definitely getting banks as gateways to bring currencies onto the platform is very important. And then along with that, bringing market makers to make markets between those currencies, cross currencies. We've already been pretty successful there. We have about 7 institutional market makers already. Now it's really kind of filling it up with banks.
So that is the game plan for the third particular part of settlement. They are actually trying to create corridors between different countries. Okay, so each corridor, say for example USD to Mexico or USD to Philippines, in that aspect they are now creating different corridors. Now we can see that USD to Euro is live. So in that way, they were actually planning this way back 6 years back. They were actually planning properly, designing what they have to do, and they are on track. So why we have to actually worry about our investment if they are not worrying about theirs? Because for us, say you have 10,000, 20,000, 30,000 or 50,000 XRP or 100,000, they have in millions, and they're actually happy with what they have and what they're doing for the appreciation of value for the particular asset. And if we just break down whatever he stated in this particular 1 minute which we listened, we get that, say, he's actually stating first, we are going to try to get different corridors live and banks get into this. So they are actually doing that. 300 banks around the world is not a small thing for a startup when we consider during that 2012, 2014 arena. And now, yeah, Ripple is a name which is being recognized by the regulators around the world. So now the banks are in. Then the next step was to bring in market makers. And in 2014 itself, he is stating that we have like 7 market makers at that time. Now, if you actually look, now you have much more, right? So the market makers are coming in, and now they're actually trying to fill up each corridor with different banks. Say, for example, now they have USD to Mexico as a corridor. Say the XRP movement is happening between exchanges, right? Digital asset exchange. But now they are trying to connect more and more banks in each side of that corridor. Say in US, they're trying to add in more banks. At the same time, they are trying to add in more banks in Mexico too, because that's the only way they can actually expand the reach towards the retailers, meaning the normal human being. Say if you have a bank account in bank A in Mexico and you're paying someone from USA in bank B, then it's actually moving between two crypto exchanges. But if you actually need to pay someone in bank C, you don't have that connection. If you don't have that connection, you can't pay. So in order to get that real adoption, they are actually trying to make more and more banks come in. Otherwise, it's kind of slow. So that part is kind of clear, right? And the next one is market makers. So it's not only providing liquidity, but also giving opportunity for investors and traders. If you look at, say, securities trading, you can actually see that market makers are there. Now, this particular one, we won't actually go much deep into that because we actually discussed the synthetic central bank digital currency previously. But the aspect here which I actually wanted to point out is the issuance and how it is being backed, and the end goal of Ripple becoming, making XRP the reserve currency, right? So looking at this, we'll read that first. There are a bunch of different stable coins that are available. It's hard for consumers to know which ones are fully backed and which ones really offer a claim on underlying reserves, and how liquid and safe those reserves are. And they're liquid and safe enough in all states of world. Now, all states of world, I don't think they are representing like US, different region. Instead, say in a crisis world, like now, and a non-crisis world, say a peacetime or a wartime, you can actually consider it something like that. Whereas this, if you actually check out the liquidity bots around Twitter or somewhere, you'll actually understand that XRP's different corridors are actually hitting all-time highs in terms of liquidity. So during wartime, it is performing well. So in the peacetime, it should be even better. Now, when we were actually talking previously about the concept of digital currency backed by a central bank and backed solely by central bank's reserve was no longer only option. Now that is a bit of update from what we previously read in different documents, right? Previously they were only looking at central bank's reserves, but now they are looking not only about that but also other options. So may even be outdated compared to the hybrid models. So they can actually bring in and allow the private sector to issue this based on their liabilities. Why is that happening? Keep that in your mind, because clear your mind first, otherwise it will be a bit of confusion. Okay, synthetic central bank digital currencies allow the private sector to issue liabilities, which can be used to purchase assets for payment. If you just go to United States liabilities, you'll understand why they are doing that. The corporate debt, if you look at that, that's kind of skyrocketing. Wow, this is that's at a historical level now. If you actually listen to the interviews of Jim Rogers, you'll understand much more about that. So you can actually check that out. But the perspective here being laid out is not only the central bank assets needs to be backed up with the new technology. If they're using it as a reserve currency, central bank digital currency, then they also need to use the private sector liabilities too, because now they are printing in trillions kind of every week, and the liabilities is being expanded. Now it's not only for the federal banks or central banks around the world, but also for the private industries too, right? They are also taking on debt more and more, so they have actually expanded their liabilities to a level which is kind of unsustainable. So with the new technology, they're actually trying to rewrite the entire history. That's why previously we talked that we are a part of new history. Now, before we actually jump into the last mile part of the payments, I would actually like to go into these documents first. We'll actually discuss through them first and then move on about talking towards that. Now here in this particular document from HSBC, if we come to the page number 7, we actually get this. They actually talk about payments. Now yes, I need to zoom in. One of my view actually requested to zoom in as much as possible. Okay, so hope this is clear enough from this point. So they're actually talking about the payments. DLT can streamline end-to-end value transfer, reducing cost, operational risk. We all know that. And settlement periods. Now, for example, they are giving Ripple's XRP ledger provides real-time cross-border settlements using tokens that represent central bank currencies. So that is fiats. In foreign exchange, HSBC's FX Everywhere tool processed more than 3 million intercompany FX transaction worth of 250 billion in its first year. So think they are showing this as an example, and they are talking that 250 billion a year just for transaction is there for just one particular bank. And they are also talking about DLT, as we just heard in the first video, and then the settlement. They are like reducing the time of transfer. They are like reducing the time of the transaction and the cost associated with that. So the cross-border settlements are being mentioned using DLT. So we know that the cross-border settlements, they are using an asset to settle from one currency to another. So it is kind of clear there. The video in which we played here, if you want, you can actually go back and play the last two areas. First it was the regulations, right? And leading that to the end was the settlement. Now, moving on to the next document, which is a submission of Ripple to the Federal Reserve. So if we actually go to that and look at it, we have like questions and answers provided about every different stuffs there. And when we actually go through that, what we can understand is they actually talk about the success of the new payment infrastructure, and they understand that interoperability is critical to ubiquity, adoption, and the ultimate success of new payment infrastructure, enabling interoperability with the delivery of atomic transaction, that is a debit to the sender's account, is accompanied by a credit to the beneficiary's account, meaning instant payment entirely, meaning the message and the settlement. While interoperability across domestic RTGS system is easier to imagine, they are talking about cross borders, which is not that easy to accomplish. But now they also highlight that it is an open source interledger protocol. Anyone can come in, jump in and use it. So at the same time, everyone will also ask about the cost. So how would the demand for and cost of using this service be impacted by design features such as 7-day accounting, blah, blah, blah. These are detailed considerations that may impact stakeholder segments differently. So that perspective entirely is being explained in a separate manner, right? So if they actually talk about the liquidity management, they are actually talking that we can do this 24/7 into 365 every day. You can do that. There is no holidays, no rest hours. You can actually do that every time. So all the questions for the Fed is being kind of answered in their perspective. And if you actually look at the top in the background itself, not the responses from Ripple, they were actually looking at industry request reflects the Federal Reserve's foundational role in settlement of interbank obligations. So settlement is what they are actually looking at, along with the faster payments. Now the next one is the contact or correspondence between bank or the Department of Finance of Canada and Ripple. Now in this particular document, if we actually move on from page number 7, we can actually see that XRP, digital asset ensuring operational efficiency and security. Now, if you actually go through this, you'll get a lot of information, but XRP is the only native asset on Ripple's settlement infrastructure, and all other funds are IOUs that are backed by deposits in the bank's account. So this allows XRP to be used as a common denominator between currencies on the network. That's how it actually works as a bridge currency. We know that. Now, in this illiquid market, that means rarely traded currencies, sending and receiving payments in different fiats will be difficult. Like this, you can actually see how complex it was previously, but now it is like this. It's so simple. Now this is the way how regulators can understand the technology easily. And the second role of a XRP itself is a security mechanism, and that's like when you open an account, you have a small reserve of 20 XRP. So think if everyone in the world is going to do this. Now, yes, we can debate on that. Say 10% of the world is going to do this in next 10 years, 20 years. So how much XRP will be required for just the opening of the account? And then a small fraction of XRP is destroyed during each transaction, which is the burn rate. So in next 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, if you are an investor looking at a long time frame, you can actually see the value and potential of this asset. But that's when we are looking at the long-term approach, right? But at the same time, we get this, the last mile playbook, the global payment. So maybe for the payments area, meaning the banks and financial institutions, we are kind of at the last mile. Maybe. As Ripple's CEO Brad Garlinghouse stated, 2020 is the year of digital assets. So if that is playing out, then this is going to be the last mile, and we are going to get a lot of surprise. Maybe during this swell announcement, we are going to get announcements which we haven't even thought of. Or we are going to get surprise in terms of price. We don't know, because the speed, transparency, and liquidity provided here is unmatchable with the legacy system, and it is becoming a reality. As we talk here, one or other way, it is happening.